Yo, guys! What? It's the kid. It's the kid here for another lovely, interesting live show. Hope everyone is doing well. Hope everyone is doing fine. And I welcome the dislikes. I love the dislikes because I think a wise man once said that if you don't have people who hate you, then you're not doing something well. And I told you, people hate me about my Cristiano views, my Messi views, and these different views. But you know what? I pride myself on asking the tough questions. And I feel I don't care about people's feelings. I don't care about going up on eggshells. I will always try and just have a conversation. Because the key thing is that I'm not here to be a contrarian. Look, I just want to be opposite. I'm like, no, wait a minute. Nothing is unflappable. And I think we can question everything. And I just thought that this is something that I've been thinking about for a very long time, because just as a precursor, I have long felt that, I think Fergie is probably the greatest manager of all time. That's what I felt. But then as I thought more about it, I said, you know what? Even if I may think that, how well can I defend that? So I thought that it was good of me, to bring on Red Devil Studio, Man United fan, great, do this always here on the Saturday Hangout to try and defend Fergie against some claims that I have written down fully. So Red Devil, what up, man?
I'm good. Thanks, man. Are you right?
Okay, so basically, so how this is going to go is obviously we will talk and we'll discuss about this, and we will take questions afterwards. So, guys, we will be interacting with the live show and everything. So, if you have a super chat, we'll read super chats regardless. But if not, we will take comments and views towards the end of this show and so forth. And look, man, we're just here to roll through and just have a discussion. I know people already hate me and everything, so it's cool. Like, I'm already used to it. So, Fergie, let's just start first with an outlook of Fergie.
Okay.
Fergie, look, man, he's
the GOAT,
definitely.
Basically, is that what you're going to say?
What is it?
I say it was the GOAT. Is that what you're about to say? Because if you're not saying that he was the GOAT, if that's not coming from your mouth, then I don't know where we're going to go with this.
My thing about this, Ferguson has always been a guy who, like, he was one of the very first figures that I knew from when I started watching football back in the early 90s and so forth. I was like, this guy was always connected to success and helped pretty much build Man United into what it was right now. So, and many people have held him as one of the greats. But as you can see in my little thing about here, I've got questions.
Okay.
I've done my research. And in doing my research, going onto Wikipedia and studying Ferguson's career, looking through his career and so forth, as I say, well, just wait a minute here. Okay. There are a few holes here. So I have it 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 6 different points that we can delve into and discuss. And I'll raise the point, and me and Red Devil, we're just going to have an honest, open conversation about each of these points. Okay. So first point is the Premier League. So
won it 13 times.
13 times winner, 100%. And I think he's pretty much owned the Premier League with Man United and so forth. But Red Devil, I've just got this is just a simple question I want to just put out there. Now, does the domination of your domestic league equate to greatness? Let's forget about Champions League and European League. Let's just not even bring that into it. Let's just focus fully on the Premier League, but more so your domestic competition.
Okay.
Does your domination of your domestic league equates to you being one of the greats?
As a statement, yeah, it has to. It has to, because we obviously need to bear in mind the context of when Sir Alex Ferguson's. If you want to go back to the beginning, I mean, and I don't know, one of your points I'll talk about later regarding his actual stint in Scotland, which I think is actually an important thing to mention. If we just focus on, him taking United from, essentially mediocrity to domination in the Premier League. You've got to bear in mind that obviously beforehand, Liverpool, obviously, certainly in the late 80s, they were the dominant force. We've also got the start of the Premier League period where you have Arsene Wenger that came in. Obviously, you've got your Mourinho's that came in, etc. So this was not a Premier League period where you didn't have teams that could compete. And obviously, if we go into the early scene, it would have been like Newcastle, for example, and Leeds. Obviously, they're nothing right now, but at the time anyway, Newcastle under Kevin Keegan, etc., were forces. So what Sir Alex Ferguson essentially did is, for such a long duration, he essentially, it was almost like teams, for teams to be great, for teams to be good, that, you know, he set Manchester United as that bar. So if you're going to be great, if you're going to be a force in the Premier League, you had to overcome Manchester United. That's why Manchester United have so many rivals during this period. We rivaled with Chelsea, we rivaled with Liverpool, we rivaled with Arsenal, and then obviously later towards when City came in under Roberto Mancini, Manchester United were that consistent bar through the time that Sir Alex Ferguson was there at the club, and you can't take that away from the guy, you know. So that, I think, in and of itself, bearing in mind obviously that.
So,
well, yes,
okay, but we're devil then.
Yeah.
So, wouldn't it be fair then to call him a Premier League great rather than a great? Because this leads to my next point. But from what you've said, 100%, everything you've said is right.
Okay.
Every rival, like United were the Kings. Everybody that came to challenge United knew that they had to take down United. But from what you've said, wouldn't it then be apt to call him a Premier League GOAT rather than an overall GOAT?
Well, I guess this goes back to the first one. The first ones, because that not many people, obviously, especially if they just focus on Sir Alex Ferguson at Manchester United, know that before Sir Alex Ferguson came to Manchester United, he managed Aberdeen actually for some time in the Scottish Premier League. And yeah, I know a lot of people in chance can say, "What's the Scottish Premier League?" It's a nothing league, nothing compared to the major European leagues. Which I would say wasn't necessarily the case back then. Now it is, but back then, actually, the Scottish Premier League was actually a lot more competitive than it is now. Despite that, before Sir Alex Ferguson managed Aberdeen, because that was the club that he was at, Celtic and Rangers had dominated that league for 15 years. So Alex Ferguson comes in, and his second season, he basically wins, I think, three domestic titles, and wins Aberdeen's probably only European, I think it was European Cup Winners' Cup at the time. It was the trophy that you had the winners of all the domestic leagues played against each other. It's not in existence now. So he took an average Aberdeen side at the time, okay, and made them compete in the Scottish Premier League, and they won trophies. So it wasn't obviously just at Manchester United. The key thing, and obviously bearing in mind this is the same guy at Manchester United who obviously won two Champions League trophies. Yes, you've got
no. I've not gotten there yet.
Fine,
okay. Because that's a whole separate topic. But
but I guess my point of there was that, like, he was successful at Aberdeen, okay. He was successful, obviously, in Manchester United, and the big point here is that he took average teams, and I think for me this is the key thing that I want to take, because when I look at greatness, you know, it's easy to, you know, this is not a dig at Pep, but when you inherit teams with quality already, okay, because the teams that Pep Guardiola inherited in your Barcelonas and Bayern Munich and Man Cities were not crap teams, were not average teams. They had quality players and they were competing for trophies before Pep came along, for example. So Alex Ferguson took an Aberdeen side, he took a Manchester United side that were nowhere near competing for trophies, nowhere near competing at the highest level, and made them compete at the highest level.
Okay, so but now here's my point I want to link it to.
Okay.
So for the best part, so in the key period that Ferguson was manager of United and was in the Premier League. So we're looking at the late 80s, the whole of the 90s, and the 2000s, and then the beginning of the 2010s, when he left in 2013.
Yeah.
For the majority of that time, if you look at the 90s and the 2000s, could you really say that Premier League teams were amongst the best teams in the world? Because for me, in the 90s, that was ruled by Italy. a bit by Spain, but Italy dominated the late 90s and even the early 2000s. So could you really say that during the 90s, during the 2000s, Liverpool or Chelsea or Newcastle were European heavyweights on the same level as a Bayern Munich, a Real Madrid, a Barcelona, a Juventus, a AC Milan, and so forth?
So what? So is the question?
So listen, my thing though is that if you're not competing in your league against heavyweights, how much credit can I give you? Because if you are now because the Serie A was without a doubt the toughest league in the world throughout the majority of the 90s and the 2000s. So maybe if people would even argue in the 80s and the 90s, Serie A was the toughest league in the world. So yes, I give you credit for what you did in the Premier League, but that wasn't the toughest league. Okay. So if you're being successful in a league that was far inferior to the Serie A and arguably even the La Liga, how much credit can I really give you for your success in the Premier League to now call you a GOAT in succeeding in an inferior league?
So do you want an example of where Sir Alex Ferguson succeeded as the GOAT in that scenario? If you look at our treble winning season, okay, our 98-99 treble winning season, bearing in mind that Manchester United only British side, only side to obviously have a domestic treble to date. Sorry, Liverpool fans. What a lot of people don't realize, because I know a lot of people said, "Oh, we fluked it in the final against Bayern Munich," which I don't think is true. That semi-final against Juventus was one of the peak Juventus sides. We're talking Agadavas, we're talking Zidane, we're talking Conte, we're talking Deschamps, we're talking Zaghi. And we're talking a midfield. Obviously, we had Keane, we had Beckham. We also had Nicky Butt in that midfield, who, he's not the greatest Manchester United player of all time, but he was there. We went to Juve and beat them. And obviously, by beating them in the semi-final, we obviously went beat Bayern Munich in the final, and we got part of a treble. So,
but you're talking about one season.
Yeah, that is one. I accept that.
No, because again, I don't even want to bring, because I told you I've got several ammos in my pocket, but I don't want to bring this out yet, because I will always give them the trouble, because I don't want to get to the Champions League point. But my thing about it is that, okay, it was great for that season. What about 96, 97, 95, 96, 94, 95, 93, 94, 92, 93? What about all those multiple seasons where I don't think United even reached the semi-final?
Yeah. No,
so the points that I'm making now is 100%. Because as guys were saying, choose where you want to be. See, because my Premier League point, again, because it's connected to another point I want to bring, but my argument is we have to accept the fact that the Premier League was inferior to several other leagues for the majority of when Ferguson was a manager. Now, during the second latter of the 2000s, so like 05 onwards, that's when Mourinho came in, that's when the Premier League was not big time. But like 2000 to 05, majority of the 90s, Premier League was the inferior league. Syria and even La Liga were the most superior leagues. So if you're succeeding in an inferior league, how can I call you the GOAT?
But that's what I'm saying. So like, if our benchmark on what we're talking about, like the most successful manager, GOAT manager, is basically how a manager does in European competition. So for example, it would be like me saying, okay, so does that, because Zidane won 3 back-to-back Champions Leagues with Real Madrid, are we now saying that Zidane is a better manager than Sir Alex Ferguson?
No. But see, for me, I'm not even bringing the Champions League points. For example, if a manager won the Serie A for 3, 4, 5 seasons in a row during the late 90s, that's an incredible achievement, because you're going up against arguably the toughest and the best clubs in the world with the best players in the world. Because Serie A how the best players in the world during the 90s and the early 2000s. So if you're a manager succeeding there, then it's huge. Now, not taking anything away from because a win is a win. Success is a success, but there are levels of success. And if we're not talking to the whole thing of greatness, greatness is how how great is your success? How great were your wins? Who were your wins against?
That should also be in the context of the players that you have. So I would say, right, okay, if that manager had your team, so let's use in the Pep example, for example, if Sir Alex Ferguson managed the players that Pep Guardiola managed at Barcelona, would he have been successful with those players, and vice versa? So I always say that, you know, I don't disagree with the fact that Italy at the time, and certainly at the time, had very good players, and we can only compare because it wasn't that United, for example, were light years in terms of player quality against some of the other teams in the Premier League at that time. But what I would say is that at least my definition of greatness comes to how a manager can make what would be called average players great players. You know, if you can make someone like Wes Brown or John O'Shea, you know, look prime, you know, then that says something, you know. So it's easy. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's easy to like have, to inherit and to have great players, your Ronaldo's, etc. And for a manager to appear good, but is it really because of them? And this is where it comes down, because we're talking about the manager here. Is it really because of the manager, or is it because of the players that you have? So for me, when my big emphasis on how great managers is when you can take. That's why, for example, I'd hate using the Pep and Klopp sort of scenario, but like it's just for Red Mollenson that I give more prop to Klopp, because he was able to transform players that were maybe good, slightly average, and make them better. Guardiola inherits really good players and makes them better, but they are already really good players. So I think you need to bear that in mind when you're talking about a GOAT, a great player. Like it's just too easy for you to say, okay, this person has inherited 10 or 11 great and awesome players, and they win multiple titles from Serie A, they win multiple Champions Leagues, but they've not actually improved the team. And you could just get any manager that could come in and improve that team, or win the same trophies, if that makes any sense. That's why I think Sir Alex Ferguson was unique in that aspect. Yeah.
All right, so let's now go to the Champions League. So, Red Devil. So if whenever I'm wrong here, just correct me.
Okay.
Ferguson took over Manchester United in 1986, correct?
Yes. 1986, 1987, yeah.
Yeah, and he left in 2013.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
So, again, math wasn't my greatest subject, but I believe that's over 20 years.
Yeah.
So, in over 20 years, Ferguson gave me 2 Champions Leagues. I'm not done.
Okay.
So in over 20 years, he gave me Champions Leagues. Now, through the power of Wikipedia, I looked up Carlo Ancelotti. Carlo Ancelotti took over Milan in 2001 and left in 2009. In that time, he won 2 Champions Leagues. Okay. So if we even want to stretch it from 2001 to 2015, so that is, so you can argue that's like up to 15 years. Oh, so that's like 14 years. In 14 years, he gave me 3 Champions Leagues. So Ancelotti, in less time, won more Champions Leagues than Alex Ferguson did. And if we want to even bring in a Jupp Heynckes, he won 2 Champions Leagues in less time than Alex Ferguson. If you want to bring in a Jose Mourinho, he won 2 Champions Leagues in less time than an Alex Ferguson. And the points that I bring in with the Champions League is that we're talking about greatness here, Red Devil. We're not talking about a Premier League great. We're talking about the greats. And if we're talking about a great manager, I need to know how you do well domestically and how well you do well in Europe. So, Red Devil, can you please explain to me how you can justify a manager who was at a club for over 20 years and only gave me 2 Champions Leagues, where there are other managers who were in clubs for far less time that's won the same amount of Champions League trophies, if not more?
Okay. So obviously, first thing first is that like it's not like these managers. Obviously, if we go back to Carlo Ancelotti, okay, he won. How many more Champions Leagues has he won? So we're talking 2 or 3. I'm not talking 5 or 6 that a manager sort of won. It's like not like there's not like a massive number difference. So that's just my first point. But I think the second point I think goes back to what I said before about the idea of making an average team a great team. Okay, and that takes time. So, and it's no doubt, it's the same thing. The same thing happened when he went to Aberdeen. Same thing when he started Manchester. He started those clubs in his first season and possibly second season. He did not start well. Okay, but making a team that can compete takes time, and certainly for Manchester United, there were at least 2 or 3 phases where Manchester United basically had to rebuild, given the fact they obviously coached Manchester United over such a long period of time. It's specifically you had the just before the class of 92, slightly afterwards. So in the sort of mid 2000s, you had a rebuild period there. Towards the end of the 2010, you had another rebuild period there. So in order to compete, you have to rebuild. In order to take average players, make them great players, you need time. And bearing in mind that a lot of those managers that you said, once again, inherited, okay, really good teams, really good squads. Okay, they didn't need to. It's like,
but Red Devil PSG is a supremely talented squad. You had the Galacticos, but they didn't win the Champions League every year.
Say that again, sorry.
PSG, supremely talented squad. They can't win a Champions League. The Galacticos, supremely talented. They didn't win the Champions League every single year. So there are managers who have inherited great players who still haven't been able to win. So
that is true. But I've got no doubt if Sir Alex Ferguson was managing PSG, the current PSG side, he would have definitely won them a CL title by now. Let alone a. I mean, if we're talking about if we adjust for the modern tactics of the game, etc., and how Sir Alex Ferguson was, especially because he actually took average players and made them better, let alone managing world-class players. You know, with no exception that Cristiano Ronaldo has said multiple times that he attributes a lot of where he's come to, being one of the best players in the world, to how Sir Alex Ferguson, to what Sir Alex Ferguson did at Manchester United. Again, HH, you even said this. You even said that with Cristiano Ronaldo, and this is a very good point. Technically, and with time, that Messi is better. You said that. So, but Ronaldo, via pure hard work, determination, etc., and skill, has gotten to where it was. So where do you think he got that from? He got that. Obviously, I'm not taking away from Cristiano Ronaldo in terms of his own personality, but he has said multiple times that, essentially, he arrived at Manchester United as the boy and left the man. So Alex Ferguson drilled that into him, and he, with his own personal ambition, made himself. So that's what I'm saying. It's like,
but the thing though for Red Devil now, again, you bring in the Cristiano point, and obviously people say, okay, he had to develop, he had to get better and everything, but he was only able to win 1 CL with Cristiano, whereas Cristiano under Zidane Cristiano under Zidane 3 CLs in a row. Cristiano under Ancelotti, obviously 1 CL, but 3 CLs he was able to win with your boy Zidane. So it connects to my whole point that I get your whole rebuild thing that teams had to rebuild, but Red Devil, he has some extremely good teams, some truly amazing teams, and again, this links into my Premier League points, because the reason why that is a weak argument for him to be the GOAT is that, okay, since you're so strong in the Premier League, therefore you should be able to at least get to the several finals. Because again, during the 90s and the 2000s, how many final appearances did United make? How many semi-final appearances did they make? How many times were they in the Final Four? How many times were they in the final?
In our title treble winning, not the treble winning, but the I think it was in 2000. So I just get the 2002, that period of time when we basically won, 2001, 2001, 2002, 2003, and 99, 2000, where essentially we won the Premier League title back-to-back three times, which again has never been done by any other Premier League side. And that's another thing. If it is so easy, why is it that he was able to do it? That is another thing. Like because if your point is that the Premier League is a weak league, it wasn't competitive, it was no one as much as the others, then why is it that what Sir Alex Ferguson was able to achieve in the Premier League hasn't been repeated?
So it hasn't been repeated, yes, but then somebody can now reply by saying that the Premier League is far more competitive now than it was back then. And then someone can now reply by saying that, all right, you won 3 Premier Leagues in a row twice. But then Arsene Wenger can start, were you ever unbeaten in a single season?
Come on.
Then Pep Guardiola can say, did he ever break the wins record? Did he ever break the points record?
Is there ever one of the Arsenal is that there's no trophy for being invincible, but it's a good achievement, but there's not actually a trophy.
They won the league.
Yeah, they won the league. Yeah, they won the league
because you see, that points was 100%. That points would be perfect if they were invincible and they didn't win the trophy. But they were invincible and they won the trophy, so that's an extra thing. And as you said, nobody has ever had Alex Ferguson's dominance in the Premier League. No one has ever been unbeaten in the Premier League before, other than Arsenal. Nobody has ever achieved the wins rare record that Man City have had. So
Man City won a treble as well, have they?
What is it?
Man City won a treble as well, an FA Cup, a Champions League, and a Premier League, which was no easy feat, as I mentioned, with the teams that Manchester United obviously played in the lead up to that to that final. It was not like a walk in the park or an easy feat at all. So,
but then Red Devil, see, now this now brings to my whole thing is like United won a treble. That is unique only in England. Other managers have won it, because remember, this argument isn't about the goal to the Premier League. If this argument was, is Fergie the goal to the Premier League? It's finished. Our argument is Fergie the GOAT, full stop. And if we're saying the GOAT, full stop, we have to now jettison that plane beyond England and now look over the whole globe and the world.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So the treble, that is an amazing achievement, because very few managers have won the treble, but it isn't a unique achievement. And greatness and doing and achieving certain things that are unique that no one else has is a special. And even I'll again doing my research, and this is what many people have said. So no one in the Premier League has ever won the Premier League 3 times in a row.
No.
And Fergie did it on 2 occasions.
He did, yes, yeah.
Did it on 2 occasions. But again, thanks to the power of Wikipedia. Now, people can say the league is trash, league is this, league is everything, but facts are facts. Max Allegri won the Serie A 5 times in a row. So,
but this is the king of ask Juventus fans. Now and if you ask any serious Juventus fan, will they say, "Oh, Max Allegri was a legend of the club"? They'll go, eh. So, yes, he did that. I'm not saying they're going to say he's trash. No true Juventus is going to say he's trash, but you will not see a true Juve fan say, "Well, Max Allegri was like, yeah, he won us 5 back-to-back trophies. He was definitely a legend at Juventus." They're not going to say that. Why? Because what he did, he did in a period of, frankly, like, dominance for Juventus. It's like winning the title for Serie A, the time, especially with the money and the players that Juventus had. It wasn't particularly unique. And right now, what Juventus aren't they going? I think they're almost almost up to a decade, potentially unbeaten. So I also look at what the fans say, and I think, and I'm going to ask you this question. HH, because I actually thought the question was like, how good is Sir Alex Ferguson really, which was a title. So which is my comment. But I see your point, and I will still push for Sir Alex Ferguson being one of the greatest managers of all time. I want you to name me 5 European managers that are greater than Sir Alex Ferguson in terms of in terms of the overall achievements. Who you think would be greater than Sir Alex?
Red Devil, I want you to save that question. I will answer that at the end.
Okay.
So after we've done with everything,
Yeah.
I will name it. So I will remember that.
Fine.
I'm going to now name. Maybe not. I don't think I can name 5, but
Okay.
I will see how many I can name who I feel are greater based on their achievements. But I will get there. So
Okay.
let me now come to another one now. So this is different league, different culture. Now, how do we tackle this one right now? You have to admire longevity.
Mm.
And you have to admire, again, for me, I think one of Ferguson's biggest strengths is how he was able to destroy, rebuild, build like 4 or 5 different teams, and was able to destroy, rebuild, tweak teams in order to face the threats of Arsenal, face the threats of Chelsea, face the threats of Man City, and defeat them. So that was great. But the reason why, shock horror, you have to give Cristiano credit was, okay, he tweaks his footballing style for Portugal, tweaks his footballing style for Real Madrid, tweaks it for Juventus, and then obviously he was a different president for Manchester United. Shouldn't we take points away, or the very fact that Fergie wasn't able to be successful in a different league? Now, people will say, oh no, it doesn't really matter. A win is a win is a win. Let's be real right now. Going into a different country and a different league, you're facing a language barrier, a culture barrier. The way that you have to speak to players is different. The way you have to interact with players is different. You have to acclimatize completely differently. So that in itself is a massive challenge. When Pep finished, I think, 3rd in his first season in the Premier League, everyone said, nah, man, the English we're playing and the English culture doesn't suit Pep. Pep, you can't succeed in England because it is so vastly different from what was like in Germany and Spain. And then he put it upon himself that, no, I will prove you wrong, and say, I will succeed in England, and I will succeed in England my way. So what do you say to the fact that Fergie wasn't able to go to a tougher league, not a Scottish or a Portuguese, in the late 90s, go to the Serie A, or go to a La Liga and manage Real Madrid and try to dethrone Messi's Barcelona, or go to the Serie A and try and take over like a Juventus and try to dethrone an AC Milan. So shouldn't we take points away by the very fact that he was not able to go to a different league or a different club and succeed?
Well, 2 things. I think one, I think it's a bit harsh to take away the Scottish thing from Sir Alex Ferguson, because at that time, when he was there, this was the late 70s, early 80s. So your La Liga, Serie A, etc., were not in full force or dom. That was the time when you actually had a lot of dominance from English and Scottish teams, from your Liverpools, from your Celtics, from your Rangers, etc. That was actually the time when they were actually doing quite well. So again, the fact that he was able to then come in, because I think at that time Celtic won. I think that was when Celtic won their 2 CLs. I can't remember the exact years, but I know Celtic definitely won their CLs in the 70s, early 80s sort of period of time. So the Scottish Premier League was not like it is now. That's certainly what I want to get straight. That's why when he came in with a team like Aberdeen, who had no right to basically challenge Celtic or Rangers for title, and after 2 seasons, 1.5 seasons, so actually won 2 titles. I think 2 of them are back to back, and then won another one, as well as the European Cup Winners' Cup. That was actually very significant at that time. So that's why I think my first point, because it's Scotland in the 90s and 20s, Scottish football 90s and 20s, banter, but at that time it was definitely significant. So that's my first point. I don't think you can take that. So he has been successful in 2 seasons. Now, when it comes to should he have gone to Italy, should he have gone to something, I don't think you can really. You gotta bear in mind that footballing culture, I think, has also changed as well. And I think at that time there was more of maybe a loyalty or supposed loyalty with managers. You know, there wasn't this kind of like sacking. Managers were obviously getting sacked, but I don't think you had the intense sacking culture that you have now. where you can, you get sacked and then you get another opportunity somewhere, etc. I think if Sir Alex Ferguson was in it now, then obviously he would be getting opportunities somewhere like a PSG or Barcelona, Juventus, etc. But I think at that time there was a lot more club loyalty with managers, and clearly the culture at Manchester United as well was that, unlike now, we have a lot more player culture where it's like, the infamous, Chelsea players gang up and get Mourinho out, etc. It was, in the case of Manchester United and Fergie, it was, if you had an agreement with Fergie, it was the players that went out. Sir Alex Ferguson had so much power in that, and that's so. In one sense, you think about it, why would you actually leave? I know, yes, you could have a challenge, but why would you leave the place where you have so much power? Because he had so much. He essentially ran Manchester United.
See, Red Devil, thank you. You've taken me to an excellent point.
Okay.
Because it's the whole notion of a comfort zone. For example, Mourinho, after he won that Champions League with FC Porto, he had incredible power. But it's like, no, I want to take this Chelsea challenge. After Inter Milan won that treble, Mourinho was on top of the world. He was like, nope, I want to now go and take up another challenge and actually prove and expand my resume, being successful in different leagues. So my thing about this is that 100%, Ferguson, he had so much power. And he didn't, players who came into Man United, they had to pretty much acquiesce and bow down to him. But I'm big on a challenge.
Where's Mourinho now, though? He's taking his challenge at Spurs, and but see, no,
100%. Look, Mourinho right now, look, it's sketchy. It's sketchy now. But my thing about this is that it says something if you can go to a different club, a different culture where you're not the boss, you're not the main man, but you can somehow instill your own successful mindset in a totally different setting, rather than just being within your comfort zone where you're king, you're God, and you're boss.
That is a fair point. Although I'd argue that, again, I guess it's an argument about like longevity. So, yes, you're right. Mourinho did do that, but now in the last, how many, 5 or so 6 years, being sacked by Real Madrid, being sacked by Chelsea, being sacked by Manchester United, most likely be sacked sort of by Spurs. Are you wanting potentially? Are you wanting a scenario where, like, at the mid to latter part of the rest of the season, you're basically known as, oh yeah, you had a great, you were great in your youth, but when you finish, you end up being like a washed up manager. Like Sir Alex Ferguson, yes, he was at Manchester United for quite a long period of his career, but he maintained consistent success from start to finish. And that, I don't care what league you're in, over more than 2 decades. Over more than 2 decades, he maintained consistent success. No matter what league you're in, that's difficult. That's not easy. So even if you've got better players, like your likes of, and your going back to Barcelona, the Messi and Suarez, etc. They were obviously successful, but there were certainly years where Real Madrid came back in. So Atletico Madrid were there, etc. There was not like you wouldn't say that Barcelona had almost like a more than 2 decades worth of dominance, although they were close. So I think it's unfair to take that from Sergio just because he's just too. So I'm trying to say that I think that's unfair to take marks from Sir Alex Ferguson because he didn't go to Italy. And there's also the argument that, possibly maybe there might have been, especially at the time, I think you could argue that I think because of English culture, not every Englishman, but sort of, I think English sort of in culture, except like that, I don't necessarily think there was a, how can I say, a desire maybe from other nations to sort of take English managers in general, for good reason, because I think maybe you looked at English culture, English managers, and it wasn't necessarily something that was maybe compatible with the culture in Italy, the culture in Spain, etc. Especially in the 90s when English football, hooliganism, all the rest of it was just all rife and stuff. So I think that possibly might have played into things as well. Not completely, but it's possible. But yeah, I just think that you can't. Persistent success over more than 2 decades is not something to be snapped at, and it's definitely something to be commended. And I just think whatever league, even banter leagues, like PSG and stuff like that, etc. It's still, it's you still have to do it, and they still aren't able to do it. You know what I mean? So
success in Uber Eats means nothing. Come on, let's be real right now.
No, but I mean, but what I'm saying is that like even PSG haven't had that. Is the point I'm trying to make, So it's like
the level of success. Okay. So now this is now the final point that we have here, just to round this one off. Impact on footballing philosophy. So before I go here, let me just take this super chats up in here right now, and then we'll go. So from Dave Top Gun, thank you for the super chats, dear sir. He says that Fergie left his comfort zone in winning trophies with Aberdeen to join a relegation threatened United.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wait, but Dave, I think you missed the points that I was making here. Like, comfort zone was one of the points I was making, but the point I made was, can you go to another tough league and succeed there? So my point was, at your height of success at United, when you already established yourself as a full-on success for Man United, why don't you go to a Syria and take over an Inter Milan or a Juventus and try to dethrone the dominance of AC Milan? Why don't you go to a Real Madrid and try to dethrone the dominance of a Barcelona?
Well,
That's what I'm talking about.
The thing is, don't need to even speculate about that, because given my point that Sir Alex Ferguson took average players and made them great players, I automatically make an assumption that, like I said almost at the start of this podcast, if you made Sir Alex Ferguson the manager of like peak Barcelona with Ronaldo, with Messi, with those types of talented technical players, and Sir Alex Ferguson managed those players, I have no doubt he would have won tons of trophies, no doubt. Now you take a Pep Guardiola type manager and you say, Pep, make Wes Brown a better player. What would happen would be, no, I need to bring in a defender. I need to spend 200 million on fullbacks, and then when I've done that, then I'll be able to make Manchester United great. So, yes, I think if you want evidence, he wasn't able to provide the evidence because he didn't manage outside of the UK, of just six, obviously imagine in Scotland. But it should be evidence enough that when he transformed average players into great players. That's my point.
So now, final points here. Impacts on football, specifically impacts on footballing philosophy. Now, nobody can deny Ferguson in terms of success, in terms of winning, and in terms of always taking his team to the mountaintop, especially with the amazing success in the Premier League treble and so forth. But I can't tell you what his footballing, how he's been able to impact on football, both tactically, strategically, or off the field. Let me give you examples. Arsene Wenger, we saw about how he totally changed the culture of football in terms of attacking, playing offensively, and with dieting and so forth. Pep Guardiola, he took what Cruyff taught him, totally refined it, and birthed and gave foundation to one of the most dominant eras of football that we've seen from 2008 to about 2010, 2011, and so forth. We look at what Louis van Gaal did with his Ajax team in how he was able to sort of expand upon the passing philosophy that was instigated by the Dutch in the 70s with his very young Ajax side. We now see what Klopp is able to do with changing the striker and making the striker another creative playmaker in his team and the Gegenpress. So my thing is, in what way has Ferguson had an impact on an imprint on footballing philosophy? Because I'll give you the wins, but in terms of strategy, tactics, how he's redefine tactics and so forth, where is the legacy and lasting effects of that in this game?
So I agree. I agree with you partly in that you're right. For Sir Alex Ferguson was not let's use the term philosophical manager. So I don't think Sir Alex Ferguson was a philosophical manager at all. But what I would say is, that can be a strength and a weakness. That could be a strength and a weak. Sorry?
I said, expand.
Explain, yeah. So, because for me, with Sir Alex Ferguson, obviously, I've laboured to death the point that he made average players in terms of coach average players and made them better players. But he was able to adapt to this. He was able to adapt to the situation in front of him. So in his tactics, Sir Alex Ferguson was not a stubborn manager. And certainly when you look at, when you look at Pep, when you look at sometimes Klopp, when you look at some of the managers that you mentioned, one of the reasons why they were not as successful as they could have been was because of their almost obedience to their philosophy that almost feels like it constrains them. So, using Pep Guardiola example again, I need to stick to my philosophy. Well, your philosophy isn't working against Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's Manchester United. Why aren't you changing it? Why are you going on? Why are you sort of, no, we have to win by our philosophy? Well, you've now lost 3 times to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer Manchester United, and you stuck to your philosophy. So, for me, yes, it's very important that managers have a philosophy. I don't think it is the be-all and end-all. And I think one of the most important aspects of managers is their adaptability, situations. I'm not saying that you give teams like respect, and Sir Alex Ferguson definitely didn't get, for a lot of us, didn't give it teams. Just before I finish my point, sorry, just one statistic that came out that will actually shock a lot of fans. Actually, over the 20-year period of Premier League, period, the average goals conceded by Manchester United over the length of Sir Alex Ferguson's reign, this is average goals conceded, was 0.9. So over 20 years, well, the average period that Sir Alex Ferguson in the Premier League, the Manchester United conceded less than 1 goal. So I'm just putting that out there because I feel that Manchester United are known as attacking, flair, counter-attacking sort of football, but clearly he knew. But clearly he was also a defense was part of that. Is the point I'm trying to make? Because if it wasn't, why would we be conceding on average throughout Alex Ferguson's entire genre less than 1 goal a game? Less than 1 goal a game. That was what. So anyway, that's just a side point. Just for that, but just to sort of finish off here, for me, great managers, they have to. Yes, having a philosophy is great, but more important than not, they have to be able to adapt. It's the same thing in if you look at going away from football, like war, generals, etc. The best generals, the best warriors, that yes, they had the tactics, just the way of fighting, but if they were not able to adapt, given the terrain and situations they were in quickly, irrespective of how much power they had, how many great forces they had, or whatever, they get beat fairly quickly. And that's where I think, for me, Sir Alex Ferguson steps ahead of some of the managers that you said. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, so look, basically, I thought that was a good thing. And I remember what you then said. So we now look at who would I put as greater as Fergie. And let me just say this to people. Again, for people, I also want everything. I think I love your dislikes and everything. I saw that they hate makes it's almost like Popeye and everything. Like your hate is like spinach to me. So, because for me, I really said, taking everything into account, you would argue that maybe Fergie might be the greatest, but I wanted to make an argument. I love trying to look in at the angle. So, but you asked me earlier that who do you put as greater? And for me, we
top
can't.
5.
So I can't name 5. I can't name 5.
Okay.
So okay. There aren't 5 greater managers than Fergie, but okay. I'll tell you the ones who I feel are greater. I have to look at Lippi to begin with.
Sorry?
Based on Lippi's success for Juventus.
Yeah, okay.
And based on what he did at the World Cup. Because it's not only, he won the World Cup and therefore he did because, Fergie never had the opportunity. It's the way in which he did so. Italy had no star players at that World Cup. They had no business winning that World Cup. And that World Cup was, of course, the players did their bit, but that was tactical, managerial brilliance. And that World Cup win was masterminded by Lippi because they were overwhelming underdogs. And we all know how incredibly tough winning a World Cup is. I've got to look at your Pankes because you have to look at the fact that his successful in winning a Champions League for 2 different teams is a big deal. So that's perfect. Winning a Champions League with 2 different teams is a big deal because remember, he won a Champions League with Real Madrid and they still sacked him. So that's just wild. And for me, that treble of 2012, 2013, and that team he built, in my view, that is one of the strongest European teams I've ever seen. And that was again masterminded by Jupp Heynckes. Just because again, I put that right up there as one of the strongest teams I've ever seen. Like what they did, those guys, they beat Barcelona 7-0. This is Barcelona side that still had Xavi and were considered one of the greatest teams of all side, and he beat them 7-0 over 2 legs, a total unbridled smackdown. Again, masterminded by Jupp Heynckes. And now this one here is. You see, this is now where it gets tricky now. Because you made a very interesting point. Because some people will say, why don't we put in Pep in terms of his impact on the game, in terms of his philosophy and helping to rebirth a kind of refined tiki-taka, his Champions League success for Barcelona twice, his treble as well. But again, as a point that he then made, I like management. And I see a lot of coaching for Pep. I'm not sure whether I see a lot of management. So can Pep manage situations? I'm not sure whether that he can. I just think he needs to be given quality players. So I'm not sure whether I can put Pep there.
I don't think you can either.
So you now look at an Ancelotti. And my thing about an Ancelotti is, yes, he had success with AC Milan, for Real Madrid, and so forth. But I just think that I just feel that Ferguson had a greater impact on his teams than I think Ancelotti did. And even for me as well, even if I don't feel like and see, my thing as well as I look, I'm not the biggest fan of Kaka and so forth. But at the end of the day, look at the AC Milan team that Ancelotti had. That was a bloody amazing team. So
exactly.
And again, as we said, if you have an amazing team, you still have to go ahead and still be successful with them and everything.
Yeah.
But you still had Shevchenko, the best striker of his generation. You still had Kaka, who was a Ballon d'Or winner. You had Maldini, you had Cafu, you had Seedorf, you had Pirlo. These were top tier players who Ferguson didn't have any players of this standard. And everything. So really,
that's what I'm trying to, not to interrupt you, I'm trying to say, like, I just want people to think, like, that if Sir Alex Ferguson, if, had those players, had those top tier players, yes, obviously we can, obviously he had Ronaldo, you could obviously Scholes and now as well, but if you're honest, how many top tier world-class players over that period did Manchester United have? Not a lot.
No,
so my always argument is, if he did have all those players, if somehow we had them and he signed all those players, how much more of a great manager would he be? How much more trophies, how much more we would have won, as opposed to those managers who had those players, and obviously only won what they had. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, actually, let me just hit over this super chat. So from Martin Rosario, thank you for the super chat, dear sir. So he said, don't forget Del Bosque, HH won 2 UCLs, a Euro, and a World Cup. That is true. But the thing about Del Bosque, why I don't even put him in the conversation, is he just has those titles. And for me, again, I'm not taking anything away from Del Bosque. You were given pretty much the blueprint to success. So, yes, you still had to manage and everything, but I'm not sure how much management you had to do when you had Spain's greatest ever generation right there for you. And Pep Guardiola had already done all the hard work for you. You just had to implement what Pep Guardiola already did, because Spain were Barcelona 2.0. That's what it was. It was Barcelona 2.0. So I don't really know how much management you really had to do.
This is a question, HH, actually, just for you. Just sort of links to Sorex. Do you think that one of the reasons why, because obviously during the period in time, Italian football and Spanish football in terms of internationals, the time when we're talking about, were obviously doing really well, hence obviously European dominance, their World Cup dominance, Germany likewise as well. So do you think that some of that actually comes to English football internationally, in terms of, I don't know, maybe the culture, grassroots, etc., not producing the talent unlike now. So, for example, now you could argue that England are one of the maybe out of 3 or 4 nations around the world that are producing quite a lot of high quality talent in like your Sancho, Rashford, Hudson-Odoi, etc. So talented players. At that time, England really were not, and you could argue that the players that were being, most of them, or certainly a substantial amount of them, were being coached by Sir Alex Ferguson. So do you think that maybe it was a lack of, essentially what I'm asking is like, is part of the reason because of the piss poor English grassroots framework at the time that stunted, because obviously bearing in mind, especially those days where I think they had even more restrictions on the amount of foreign players and stuff like that you could sort of sign and stuff like that as well. So I'm just thinking whether that actually was a shackle more than anything, compared to obviously teams in Italy and Spain, where they obviously had more homegrown talent coming through and they could obviously benefit their domestic leagues as a result, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, I think, no, that's a fair point, because again, I told you, one of my biggest beefs with Fergie's record is his lack of a legacy in Europe. And the thing about it is that you can be the best manager in the world, but if you're going up against some of the best stars in the world, it's always going to be very difficult. There's only so much you can do with an average team going up against a Thuram, a Batistuta, a Van Basten, a George Weah, a Del Piero, and so forth, because these guys are just high. And at the end of the day, yeah, you can, it's management and so forth. But when you have superstars that can just win a game like that, then it's very hard for you to do. And I remember when obviously I used to be living in Nigeria and so forth, and I remember when United just couldn't get past that second round, that quarterfinal, and they just couldn't get over the hump. And I was like, yeah, man, United, like, they are great in the Premier League, but when it now comes to Europe, they're so far inferior to these Italian teams who are just far better and pretty much rule and dominate Europe. So maybe you could argue it was a case that because he wasn't able to gain access, because remember, as you said, there were more restrictions with regards to how many foreign players you could bring in. And the grassroots English talent simply wasn't good enough. I mean, throughout the 90s and so forth, how many English players could you say were world-class?
Exactly.
I would say Shearer. Scholes only really developed in the 2000s. So really, during the 90s and so forth, I'd always say Shearer.
Gascoigne, possibly,
Gascoigne, maybe. And even Gascoigne, he then went over to Italy eventually. So, and again, but then that is what you then may even put more into Fergie's favor. But the very fact that Fergie was like, okay, doing more with less. Yeah. And that's how you have a Fergie over a Pep. Because again, I told you, Nicky Butt, Gary Neville, Phil Neville, these are roadmen. Like, I don't care what anyone says, like Nicky Butt, these are full-on roadmen. What's obviously Kanchelskis, Poboski, these are roadmen. And he made a bunch of unknowns.
Anderson, man. Anderson with a Premier League title. Brazilian Anderson, you can list them out of below average to average players, but they all have got a Premier League title.
This dude, Poboski was literally a pace merchant. This dude called Poboski, like, we used to crack a joke, me and my brothers, like, Poboski would literally hit the ball and just run. That's how he dribbled past guys. He would just smack the ball far and then just go over after and chase the ball. So there were but you see, like, obviously, like, say, when he now had, I think people brought it, when he now had like an Andy Cole and a Dwight York, it was like boom. But then I asked people, because see, Ferdinand was 2000. We're not looking at the 90s.
Yeah, we're still
in the 90s. I might give you Andy Cole, but even if you say Andy Cole, was Andy Cole viewed as what? Was Andy Cole in the same class as a George Weah, a Batistuta? I'm not sure he was. I don't think he was, because again, for me, Andy Cole was very good, but I think he was a level below Batistuta and Weah, who were pretty much amongst the best strikers of that decade, really. And also Kluivert. I mean, what would you put Andy Cole and Kluivert in the same class? No, you wouldn't.
No, I agree.
He was very good. He was probably in the level below that. But look, I think, again, this is even a question that someone asked me on Twitter. I said, okay, who is the greatest manager of all time? That's hard to answer.
I think you have to, obviously, I mean, as for United bias, I'm going to say Sir Alex Ferguson, but obviously that there is evidence, there is reason for that. And then the fact that you can only name 2, possibly 3 managers, is a testament to Sir Alex Ferguson. We're not talking about top 10, top 20, etc. We're talking top 3, like top 5 minimum, top 3 definite, top 3, more than likely. And then we're having a debate on first, second, and third, depending on your experience. And if you're a Bayern Munich fan, you're probably gonna go with Heineken's. So I get that, and I don't have an issue with that per se. I just think that my main, reason for defending Sir Alex Ferguson, and I will repeat this to Kingdom Come, is that you just can't take away from the fact that his longevity of success and his ability to make average players win things. That, because, and I'm sure you say yourself in your Chelsea sometimes, like, you do have to instill that winning mentality. That's not something that is just there. That some players may have that and bring that with them to themselves, and like a Ronaldo potentially, though obviously we know where Ronaldo came from. But that has to be instilled. That has to come from somewhere. And I think if you look at any ex-Manchester United player, even the bond or average ones, that winning mentality that he instilled. So no matter who sort of came in, even if they were Bondor, they almost got took up in that winning mentality and they delivered. And that's something that I don't see that many managers were able to do that, where, you can have a Bondor player, a really good player, and persistently you can continue to motivate, because a lot of times, especially, you'll find that players might win, teams might win 1 or twice, and then suddenly they lack the motivation, lack the desire. They get another manager in to try and motivate them again. The cycle repeats itself, etc. But to have that persistent mentality, to be able to continuously, get them to win, win like a treble of titles back to back twice. That's it's Sir Alex, man. It's Sir Alex.
Actually, so maybe let me say the super chat. So from Armchair Critic, thank you for the super chat, Armchair Critic. HH, where do you rank Pep all time? For me, it's difficult, but let's play a game. Let's say Pep said, "I'm retired, I'm done now," and he was to finish right now. Where would I rank him all time? That's a hard one, because the thing with Pep is I can't just see. Maybe people are different. I can't just rank you based on how many trophies you've won. I can't do that. I have to say, like, okay, what did you do as a man? How successful were you as a manager in and of yourself? And of course, Pep has to be in the conversation. So you would be crazy not to put Pep top 10 or even put him top 7 and so forth. But my thing is, how talented were the players that you had, and how was your success as a result of what you did as a manager? So that is why the levels of success. So 100% Pep is in it. So I may put him top 5. And when I put him top 5, I'm looking at putting him 5th. Or maybe 4th, but probably most likely 5th.
Is that ahead of Mourinho?
You know what?
Pep over Mourinho.
Like, see, people want to insult Mourinho. People really want to get him out of here. I can't put Pep ahead of Mourinho. Because my thing is, again, it's another point that you made. How much could Pep succeed with the United team that Mourinho took over? Would Pep win a treble with that Inter Milan team? How successful would Pep be with that Real Madrid team? Because for me, Mourinho has shown better example of management than Pep has. Because Mourinho has gone into total different situations and been able to succeed in different systems, different teams, and just been able to go out and just succeed with them. For Pep, everything has to be catered for him. Everything has to be to his liking. Because again, let's just look at Pep. So Pep, Barcelona, 100%. You brought in Busquets, you brought in all these guys, and so forth. You did have Messi. You did have a team that ended up winning 3 international titles. Bayern Munich, you took over a treble winning team. The team won a treble the season before you came in. And when you now look at Man City, my gosh, you have the biggest transfer funds amongst any club in the world. So my thing with Pep is like, okay, Pep, can you go to a Roma and dethrone Juventus? Can you go to an AC Milan and rebuild them? You know, can you, so if you can do that, okay, that shows me something. Because again, why see people will insult Mourinho, and look, you can insult him only once, but let's just look at the guy's career. Mourinho gave Chelsea their first ever league title.
Yeah.
Mourinho gave Inter Milan and Inter Milan their first ever Champions League, their first ever treble, and the first ever Italian team to win a treble was by Mourinho.
Yeah.
So Mourinho was going into clubs and giving them their first things. So yes, Pep won the first treble for a Spanish team, but at Bayern Munich he did nothing new. At Man City he's done nothing new. So that's where
it's how I feel it's how, like, it's how when there's an argument that when a manager leaves and you see the effect of that manager leaving, it's the age-old saying, you only appreciate something when it's gone. No, it says United fan, as soon as Alex Ferguson left, and it's a bit more complicated than that, but you can clearly see since he's left, Manchester United have not won a Premier League title. There are other reasons for that, obviously.
Two things there. Let me ask you two questions here.
Yeah.
First question. Should David Moyes have been given a summer?
Yes. I actually believe David Moyes should have been given. If David Moyes was given the backing that Van Gaal was given and Mourinho was definitely given, there's a possibility he could have done better than he was. He wasn't backed in the sum of that time. And I'm not going to go into a rant about the United hierarchy, which is a bit of a joke and mess up, etc. So that's the main reason consistently, and that just shows. So a lot of people don't get that, the United hierarchy, when the Glazers took over, just the latter part of United's reign, they were relying on Fergie because United were not bringing in. Yes, they were spending money, but we were like selling players like your Ronaldos and stuff like that who went and bringing in players that were half as good. The scouting wasn't great. We're signing likes of Michael Owen, for example, and various other things. So they were really relying on Fergie really directing the ship for Manchester United as a football club. As I said, he was very much in charge of the first team, the full team, and trying to sort of keep some sort of stability.
But my thing though is then my next question is because obviously Moyes, or even if he did it for Everton, he was not a big, huge name, and he hadn't won any major trophies. So what if Ferguson had left and the very next manager to take over was either Mourinho or Van Gaal? Would Man United have done better if you had a more experienced winner taking over just after Fergie left, rather than a Moyes who had never coached or won anything at a major level?
Well, possibly. I mean, I was reading recently beforehand, I'm sure, I don't know if it was Klopp or Pep, but certainly one of them before actually David Moyes was appointed, that one of those two managers were actually in more of a contention than Moyes, but because they were one of them, I don't know, it was either Klopp or Pep, I can't remember. So, but because they're basically occupied, they couldn't. They said basically, I'm committed to this club. I'm not going to basically take the job. So Manchester United, no doubt, were looking for more experienced managers ahead of Sir Alex Ferguson. It's just that it seemed anyway that they weren't able to get a more experienced a manager aside from David Moyes, who they think would be able to control, who they'd be able to part of their philosophy. And Sir Alex Ferguson, I think, actually wanted to stay on for another season so they could actually continue their search. But I think his wife was kind of like, "Nah, you need to go out. You need to leave now because you're 71 years old and you need to leave." Basically, So obviously, Mrs. Orders. He obviously had to retire that year. I have no doubt, and I agree with you that had they more, I think that As much as I love Rex Ferguson, I will say, and for any United fan that's listening to this, he still had his issues. I disagree with him with the way that he handled, for example, like Roy Keane, Stam, Beckham. So they're the two sides of that coin. His managing could have been a bit more restraint at times, and even towards the end of the season, like the way that he left Manchester United in that title year wasn't the best in terms of handing over to another successor manager. Although, like I said, some of that could also be coming from the board because, like I said, if you look at the players that United brought in the last maybe 3 or 4 years, they weren't that great. And the
Oh, no. But do you know what my conspiracy theory is?
Go on, yeah.
My conspiracy theory is Fergie chose Moyes because he was like, no one is going to really question him because he has been successful and he is Scottish and so forth. And maybe he is like the right man, that this is the right job for him to succeed as after his success with the Everton. But he chose Moyes because he knew that he isn't going to usurp me. And because I know that he's not going to be as successful as I am, even when I leave, they will still appreciate me. So I think there was a bit of ego in him choosing Moyes.
He took as a fall guy almost. I mean, that's possible. It's possible. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like it's the hierarchy, it's the management that obviously have the. I don't care what people say. It is the Glazers, it's the hierarchy that have the final say in terms of who comes to manage. And as long as they're making money, as long as they want to be successful, they don't really sort of care. So I think that what you said could partly be true, possibly, but I don't think David Moyes would have been hired if the Glazers did not themselves think that, from what they saw with Everton, that he could do a reasonable enough job at Manchester United. I also think as well that I don't think we've got to also bear in mind. I don't think at the time that Manchester United realised or took seriously the rise of Manchester City, because it was that 2012-2013 period that Manchester City had started to come in, spending their money, albeit illegally, as we're finding out, and building, their and I think the Glazers at the time thought, City are kind of, it's just not noisy neighbours. And I think only after Moyes and certainly after Van Gaal, they realised, oh my goodness, Manchester City are like, they're a real force now. And if they realised that earlier, they might have made things different. If that makes sense.
Okay. So guys, we're going to take some questions. So last 10-15 minutes, we'll just take some questions. So send in your questions for me and Red Devil, and we'll try and answer your questions. So send in your questions right now or lose it. So got this one here. Where would you rank Stam? So the thing about Stam is this. What happened here? Was it that Stam wrote something in his book and Fergie was pissed off?
As to why he left Manchester United.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Because they have so much of a falling out, and it was to do with something. Him and Fergie, but basically, when Stam was at United, he was a very good defender, and once he left United, he just fell off the map, And you see, I wouldn't put Stam in like a category of, let's say, like a Desai, Cannavaro, a Maldini. I may put him in as maybe a tier below or just below. They're like, so you see, for me, I wouldn't say Stam is as good as, let's say, a peak Ramos or a peak Chiellini, but I'd put him just a tier below there. So, yeah. So I mean, like, what about you? Where would you rank Stam?
Yeah, I would say I would say that as well. I think just in regards to the first question. So, like, I think both Stam and Ferguson both disputed it being about the book. I think there was some behind the scenes stuff, potentially needing to offload a player, etc. So again, coming from maybe Ferguson on the board. So I think it seemed to be more about the idea that they need to get rid of somebody, and it seemed to be Jaap Stam, and he seemed to not be particularly obliging. So that might have been one of the reasons. In terms of ranking Stam, your tiers, you have like upper tier 1, upper tier 2 sort of. I wouldn't say I maybe up in his in his best season, I would say probably upper tier one. Sorry, upper tier two. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I think that's reasonable. So after that, so then you're going to maybe sort of mid to lower sort of tier. I wouldn't necessarily he was the, especially when I would say, and again, I value longevity. So when you look at, for example, the Ferdinand and Vidic partnership for that period of time, I'd actually rank that higher than what Jaap Stam did, for example.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. No, that was a strong friendship. Now, this might be. How good was Scholes really?
Oh my goodness, man!
The thing about this is Scholes' ability-wise, his ability is on question. And I've always said this is that Scholes is better than Lampard and Gerrard, 100%.
Yes, absolutely.
Anybody see? I don't mean to be rude. I don't mean to be rude here, but I feel Scholes' football IQ and intelligence was greater than Lampard and Gerrard.
Absolutely.
What I've always said about Gerrard is that Gerrard was very versatile and very adaptable and everything, but I don't think he had the intelligence to play central midfield. Lampard did have the intelligence, but did not have the technical ability and composure that Scholes had. Scholes had the ability and the footballing IQ, intelligence, and composure to play the position. The only thing that holds Scholes back is he just comes from the wrong country. Or he came from the wrong country at the wrong time. Like Scholes, maybe in the 1990 England team, that would be great. Scholes was simply in a team that just wasn't very, very good. That a lot of hype that just simply was not very good. Scholes is the only English midfielder of that time that could perfectly fit into a Spain or an Italy. I don't think Lampard or Gerrard had the technical quality to play within the footballing complexity of Spain's team or Italy's team. So
no, I agree. Well, you got Zinedine Zidane, who's arguably one of the best midfielders, who's saying, "My toughest opponent." This is from Zidane. "My toughest opponent, Scholes of Manchester. He is the complete midfielder. Scholes is undoubtedly the greatest midfielder of his generation." That is what Zinedine Zidane said, and I absolutely 100% agree with what Zinedine Zidane said, because I think this is the problem with a lot of modern football, is that it's, again, was Scholes a flashy player? No, neither was Pirlo, to be fair. So it's like, because he wasn't flashy, because he wasn't scoring loads of goals, because he wasn't making multiple assists, somehow that means that, or you get the impression that he wasn't that good. But as I think it was Peterson, the quote I told you about, Peter Schmeichel said, a player is really good when you don't actually notice they're having a bad game. And when it comes to Paul Scholes, as a fan, I would bet you couldn't really ever tell when Paul Scholes had a bad game. In fact, it was very rare to see Paul Scholes having a bad game. Schmeichel could have a bad game, Stam could have a bad game, likes of Keane, etc. But Paul Scholes, very, very, very rare. Very, very, very rare. And on top of that, his longevity as well. This guy was still playing in his mid-30s for Manchester United.
Oh no, and wait, didn't he come? Ferguson put him out of retirement because United were running low on midfielders, and he was still one of the best players in the league.
Exactly. That goal against Barcelona, I think.
Oh yeah, crazy.
In the build-up, absolutely, brilliant. So no, I mean, it's how good was Scholes really? I mean, come on.
All right, so this is an interesting one from Brian K. So thank you for the super chats. United 99. For me, this is easy. Despite that 08 team having Cristiano obviously at his best, I feel that, because obviously it's weird because you basically have like a Ferguson clone on the other side. But I feel like if the Ferguson of 98, 99 and that team would be able to have a plan for suppressing Cristiano's threat, because that would be the main threat. But that 98, 99 team had a far superior midfield and a far superior attack. And again, one of the best strike partnerships I've ever seen was Andy Cole, Dwight York. So I don't know how the 08 team would deal with the midfield of the United 99 team's midfield. And I don't know how the defense, even if the defense was strong, Ferdinand and Vidic, I believe, even if the defense was strong, I don't know how they would have dealt with the strike partnership of Dwight York and Andy Cole. and also the supply from David Beckham and supply and the other attacking outlets of gigs. So, what about you?
No, I actually agree. Actually, and not just because it was like one of my most favorite childhood memories. So us United winning that treble, and Solskjaer has won it, etc. But for some of the stuff that you said, I'm not going to. We don't bring about the enforcer that was Roy Keane, who really, really made that. We're talking. I don't know about you, H, but I do miss the days of that traditional defensive midfielder enforcer. Your Patrick Vieira's, your Makelele's, your Roy Keane's, that sort of. You know, those times when they really made the defensive midfielder, whole midfielder, like they were the captain, they were the beast, they were the one marshalling people around. So I just feel that that although 2008, as you said, probably had the better overall balance in terms of the midfield and their attack as well. It's like you said, I think that the 99 team, because again, it's just important to mention that doing a treble even at that time was not an easy thing, especially with the route that
Inter Milan, Juventus,
exactly
Bayern Munich.
Bayern Munich exactly, and even in the FA Cup the route was challenging. So I just feel like that team, what they accomplished with more grit, with more determination, and a bit of Fergie time, obviously, it just has to be 99. It has to be 99. It's just something that no team, no obviously Premier League team has replicated. So you've got to give it to 99.
Okay, I think we'll just take one more. And I think I saw actually, okay, let's try so something a bit different here. So says H, what is your opinion on Bayern giving Flick an extension till 2023? It is confirmed, by the way. But look, for me, I've always said that because when I always look at a team's rhythm, and when I looked at the rhythm of Bayern under Ancelotti, I knew that the rhythm was wrong because I don't look at numbers or who scored. I just, I go based off a feeling. I watch football mostly off my feeling and my sixth sense. And my sixth sense says under Niko Kovac, something wasn't right. Under Hansi Flick, I was like, this team just works. So all they just need is just need better players and everything. But there is a chemistry, there's a rhythm to this team. Things are connecting. Whereas under Kovac, I'm thinking it was broken down, it was rigid, it was okay, we'll be in a flow for here and everything, but they just seem to flow more. And for me, I always say that even if you want a big name as a manager, all that matters is, do the players like the manager? Is the team playing well? Then that's good. Even if the team isn't getting results, then you have to say, is the team not getting results because of the manager, or is the team not getting results because the players are not playing well and don't have the right players? But under Bayern Munich and under Hansi Flick, chemistry, rhythm, playing superb football, and they have superb chemistry. So yeah, I think that it is. For me, I think Zimbabwe could just got lucky because it is so hard for you to find the right kind of manager, because Niko Kovac was great for Frankfurt, it didn't work. And Klopp is the great Ancelotti, it didn't work. What if they got a Pochettino or a Mourinho brought in? It may not work. So they've just been fortunate enough that their caretaker has come in and has done well. So what are your views on Hansi Flick?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said. Obviously, previous coach was not doing. It wasn't good. Let's put it that way. It wasn't good. So Hansi Flick has really come in and stabilized the ship at Bayern Munich. This is one of those. It's a difficult one because obviously, and this is where my United bias comes in. The whole sort of caretaker manager type thing. It's Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and the like. It's done really, really well. It's a caretaker manager, and then as soon as you then give them the permanent manager post, will things change? So I'm curious. I'm not taking anything away from Hansi Flick. I think he's doing a very, very good job. But I'm just curious to see that if they do, obviously, if they appointed him, I'm just curious to see whether, when football comes back, whether things might change, because there is a difference between being a caretaker manager and being a full-time manager. There is. I don't think you necessarily have as much pressure because you, as a caretaker manager, kind of know, I'm there. I'm just helping out. So if we win, and just relax and just play your game, etc., etc. When you're now football manager, when you're now in charge, you have to make more maybe authoritative decisions, and I think it gets a bit more tricky, So yeah, I'd be curious to see whether there's actually any. There shouldn't be, maybe, I don't know, but we'll see. After maybe a season, whether things sort of change. So I think it's a good decision for Bayern, but we'll wait and see.
Okay, well, guys, look, man, that's rounds up everything from us, Red Devil. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. It was a nice, open conversation. Look, we're just having a nice debate. Hopefully, I'll try and get Red Devil sometime in the week just to give us an update on this whole coronavirus stuff and everything, because because I want that to be a separate segment and a separate show just on the state of football right now, the state of the virus, and when we think it would actually be advisable for sports and for the football season to resume and so forth. So we'll try and schedule that live show sometime during the week, next week, man. But yeah, look, man, Red Devil, thank you for being on and everything, man. So any final parting words before you say adios?
Well, thanks for having me on, HH. Thanks everyone, obviously, that was listening. Please, obviously, like, share, and subscribe to HH's channel. And if you want to check out my channel, I've got a channel as well. United it's called Red Devil Studio. So Manchester United fan channel. So please check that out.
Wait. What's your Twitter handle?
At We Are United X.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. So basically, I will put Red Devil Studios Twitter handle in the description box. So his handle will be in the Twitter box, in the description box below. So follow him right there, and then you can give your boy Red Devil Studio a follow. Trust me, on Twitter, follow the boy. His handle will be in the description box below. All right, guys, I'll see you guys tomorrow for my trial and sentencing. Peace out.
Take care, man. Take care.
All right. Become a Football Hut member and gain access to cool emojis on the live streams and get access to new YouTube content by clicking the join button here. And to view that new content, head over to the YouTube channel homepage and click on the community tab over here.